Let's go ahead and begin. Welcome everybody to tonight's webinar, Hot Stuff. Oh, to go back one slide. Hot Stuff, Electrifying Water Heating, Cooking, and Clothes Drying. This webinar is sponsored by the cities of Bloomington, Eden Prairie, Edina, and St. Louis Park. And I am Sean Rodin, and I'm joined by my colleague Najma Ahmed, and we're with the Center for Energy and Environment and Electrify Everything Minnesota. We're glad that you could all join us tonight. Next slide. So tonight we'll start with a little bit of review from our last webinar, but not too much. So if you were able to join us last week, great, you'll see some of the same stuff. But if you weren't, then this will be new information for you. Then we'll talk about heat pump water heaters, induction stoves, and heat pump clothes dryers. We'll then talk about electrical panels and discuss some resources that you can use to help with pay for your electrification projects and other resources as well. And then we will end tonight with our Q&A with our neighbor panel. Next slide. Some housekeeping items. Please put your questions in the chat. Make use of the chat. We'll answer clarifying questions during the presentation. So if you see a term or an acronym or something on the screen that you don't know, go ahead and put that in the chat. If you have specific questions about your house, your system, your appliances, then save those to the end. And we might also be able to get our residents neighbor panel to answer those. We will send out slides with links after the presentation. So if you see something and you want more information about it, it's hyperlinked. You can take advantage of that after the presentation. Or if you want to reread something, again, you'll have this in your own hands afterwards. So no worries. Next slide. Okay, so let's start with the steps and benefits of home electrification. Next slide. So one question that we get pretty often is, does electrification really reduce carbon emissions? Not all of our electricity comes from renewable resources, so is it really better than gas or fossil fuels? Well, the good news is that yes, the electric grid is not only on its way to being carbon free, but is already substantially carbon free. In fact, Excel Energy, which most of you who live in these four cities sponsoring the webinar, is on a path to achieving 80% carbon-free electricity by 2030 and 100% by 2040, per a law passed by the Minnesota legislature that says that all electricity produced in the state by 2040 will be net renewable. And statewide, 54% of power of electricity already comes from zero carbon sources. So the grid is already pretty clean, especially compared to other states around the country, and is getting cleaner every year. Next slide. Another reason to electrify is that using electricity is safer. Putting electric appliances or having electric appliances in your home removes common hazards that come with gas equipment, like indoor air pollution and other contaminants and combustion hazards if those appliances are not combusting properly. And we're learning more and more about some of the pollutants that some of those appliances do emit. Next slide. So there are a lot of projects that you can take on to electrify your home. Last week, we talked about weatherization, and we spent a lot of time on heat pumps and heating and cooling systems. But this week, we're going to be focusing on water heating, clothes drying, cooking, and your electrical panels. Next slide. And we like to put this all into perspective because the energy use in our home is kind of a puzzle, but we want to give people an idea of kind of what the big fish are. So compared to the national average, the average home in Minnesota uses about 72% of its energy for heating alone. But you'll see after heating comes hot water heating, and we'll be talking about that tonight. And although heating does make up the largest portion of home energy use, those other things do add up and they can make a difference, not just with energy use, but the benefits we already talked about. But in terms of energy use, these are the major categories that they fall into. Next slide. We asked this last week. Feel free to answer it again. And those of you who were not here last week, we want to know what are some of your motivations for switching to electric appliances? Is it climate or environmental reasoning or motivations? Um, are you interested in some of the health benefits? Um, so go ahead and put those in the chat. I really enjoyed last week seeing what everyone was interested in. It's always interesting to me. All right. Well, we're going to move on, but let's see. Renewable energy, climate impact, efficiency. Good. Yeah, a few different reasons. Clean air. Yeah, air quality, indoor air quality. It's a big one. Great. Okay. Well, we're going to move on, but please keep putting those in the chat. We love to see them, and other people do too. So we're going to move on to heat pump water heaters, and Najma, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, everyone, we'd love to hear what your motivations or goals are. So keep throwing those in the chat as we're talking here, and I will jump onto heat pump water heaters. Um, so heat pump water heating is the second biggest source of energy usage in your home after um, heating, as Sean mentioned earlier. So focusing on efficient heating, efficient electric water heaters, which are heat pump water heaters, is a really powerful way to reduce your emissions and save energy. What are some of the benefits of heat pump water heaters? Well, there are a few, and the biggest one is that they're electric. And because they're electric, they produce fewer emissions. They also do not have combustion, they don't leave combustion gases in your home, which is really good for a lot of health benefits. They're very energy efficient. In fact, they're up to 3 times more energy efficient than the typical usual models. And they have dehumidifying effect, which is really great for humid basements. And lastly, your bills will have comparable costs with traditional gas models, which can save you a lot of money in your bills. So how do they work? The way they work is that they utilize heat pump technology that pulls in heat from the surrounding air and then pumps heat into the water tank. So in basic physics is that heat goes to cold. What they do is that they move heat from the air into the water and then they expel cool, dry air. This diagram shows how that works. So on the left side here, you have the top of the heat pump water heater. That is the actual heat pump part. And that part draws in warm air with a fan that blows that warm air over cooler evaporator coils, which then absorb that heat. And then by absorbing that heat, they actually then expel cooler air. And if you look onto the right side on the right side, you see that that absorbed heat goes down into the coils there, into the red coils, and then that distributes the heat into the water. And then on the right side, those yellow little electric heating elements, those are electric resisting booster heat that can kick on when extra heat is actually needed. Um, Basically, that's the way the heat pump water heaters work when we think of like the whole physics behind it. When you're thinking of upgrading or installing a heat pump water heater, the biggest question is, will I run out of hot water with a heat pump water heater? And that's a really good question. And in short, no, you will not run out of hot water with a heat pump water heater, and they actually provide roughly the same amount as the other models do. If you look at the first row here, the showers row, you'll see that you'll get about 2.75 to 3.25 consecutive showers with a heat pump water heater. And with a gas tank, you'll get about 3.5. And then for the electric resistance, you'll get 3.25. And then if you go up to the third row, you'll see that the first hour rating, that is the amount of gallons of hot water that's delivered in the first hour. That's, for example, the first hour of showering. So it's about the same for heat pump water heaters as well as gas tanks. The only one difference is the recovery rate, which is the amount of water a heat pump can raise by 90 degrees Fahrenheit in 1 hour. We can see that for a heat pump water heater, it's a little bit lower than the gas tank, but it's closer to the electric resistant. In order to make sure that you never run out of hot water, the what you need to make sure is you have the right sizing. So this just breaks down the tank size you will need for your household occupancy. For example, if you're in a household with 1 to 2 occupants, you'll need a 50-gallon tank. If you're 2 to 4 people in your household, you'll need 6 to 5. And then if you're like 3 to 6 or like over, you'll need 80. So making sure that you have the right tank size is very important. Another thing that's recommended when upgrading or installing a heat pump water heater is it's going one size up. So if you're going from a gas storage unit to our heat pump water heater, it's recommended that you go one size up. If your household includes children or teenagers, as we know, those tend to use more water. And then if your occupancy is likely to change within 5 years. The usual most heat pump water heaters are 240 volt models, meaning that they require 240 wiring running to them. So in recent years, there has been other options. So there's the 120 volt models, which are now widely available. These are great options for smaller households. If you have like less people in your household and you tend to not use a lot of water, this is a great option for you. If they're also great options for homes that would otherwise need or wish to avoid an electric panel upgrade. Sean is going to talk about electric panels in a little bit, but those can be costly. So if you currently are trying to avoid that, this is a great option for you. And also, if you have the 120 wiring in your household and you don't want to upgrade to the 240, it's also another option why you should choose this. Question is, where should I have my heat pump water heater installed? And it all boils down to location, location, and location. The location of your heat pump water heater is very important for reasons that have to do with air volume, comfort, and maintenance. Location and air volume is very important because, as I mentioned earlier, heat pump water heaters draw heat from this air surrounding it and they expel cooler air. So they need an adequate volume of air to function properly and efficiently. So making sure that they have enough space to draw that air. And it's recommended that they're installed in areas between 450 and 700 cubic feet for rooms such as usually basements or utility rooms. Air volume needs, let's say you don't have a big utility room or basement, you can still install a heat pump water heater. You just need to make sure that there's airflow. And a couple of ways that you could do that is by either one, having a louver door, that is just making sure there's louver at the top where where warm air can be drawn in, and then at the bottom here where cooler air can be expelled. Another option is ducting from one room to another. And just to make just one note, ducting has to be done inside. It cannot be done outside. Another recommendation for heat pump water heaters when installing them is the maintenance. Simply because heat pump water heaters are a little bit taller than the traditional tank water heaters. They're between 60 to 75 inches taller, and they have the filter at the top. So when it comes to like maintenance where the filter needs to be changed or there's other maintenance reasons, they need making sure that there's adequate clearance for access of at least 6 inches is very much recommended. A third question that people often have is if heat pump water he if my heat pump water heater removes heat from the air, will it leave my house feeling cold? And I'm gonna pass it off to Sean to answer that question.
Muted. Yeah, that's another question. After the cold water, it's will the air be cold in my basement, my utility room? So let's dive into that. Go ahead to the next slide. So, if a heat pump water heater is installed in a basement, a large basement, or a utility room, there's usually a 1 to 2 degree temperature impact during the heating months. During the cooling months, it's not really, you can't really perceive that. And it might be cooler. It's probably cooler if you're standing right next to the unit. It's coming out of there, but over the space of a room, it's about 1 to 2 degrees. And those effects are only felt when the unit is running, which is on average 3 to 5 hours a day. So let's say people wake up, they take showers, get ready for work, school, whatever for the day. That heat pump water heater might be running, for 2 or 3 hours in the morning and maybe 1 hour at night or something like that, depending on when you have that high demand. So it's not constant all the time. This isn't really noticeable again if it's installed in a basement or utility room where that temperature impact has room to spread out. But again, you want to make sure since it's expelling cooler air that if you have to duct or if your heat pump water heater is set up in a particular room that it's not blowing that into frequently occupied space because that could be it could be bothersome depending on the person. Next slide. So, how much noise do heat pump water heaters make? This is something that people probably don't know to ask, but something that maybe someone who has a heat pump water heater, you can ask our panel when we get to them about it, but something that is different. So go ahead to the next slide. So heat pump water heaters do make more noise than traditional water heaters, and that's because they have that heat pump with a compressor running. Again, it's only maybe a few hours a day. Some of the newer models, the sound is around 45, 50 decibels. That's comparable to a dishwasher, or if you look at our sound levels here between, say, a soft whisper and a conversation 3 feet away. Only made, again, 3 to 5 hours a day when that compressor is running. But that's another reason why location is important. You probably wouldn't want to put that water heater if you um, if it's making a little bit of noise right next to a bedroom wall where your head is when you try to sleep. But that's probably a fringe case in most households. Next slide. So questions for contractors. What are you going to want to ask your contractors when shopping for a heat pump water heater? Well, asking the right kinds of questions will help you find the right model for your home. So you should ask about the things that we were just talking about, the sizing and the location. Next slide. So how do you determine what size my household needs? How do you know what size we might need? So a contractor should ask how many occupants are typically in the household. If there are any issues with hot water supply, maybe you're once in a while, more often than you'd like, running out of hot water, and so that might suggest you need 1 or 2 sizes bigger, or maybe you have no problem at all, right? They should ask about your hot water usage patterns. How many showers are being taken a day? How often do you do laundry? Do you use hot water? Use cold water with your laundry? That sort of thing. And they might possibly propose sizing up. So we suggested sizing up when you're switching from gas to electric, and so they should at least suggest that, or that might be an option in the event that it's needed. They should not say they'll just do a one-for-one size replacement because let's say you're running out of hot water once in a while, more often than you like. You don't want to replace your water heater and have the same issue. Next slide. And location. How do you determine where to? Oh, go back one slide. Thank you. How do you determine where to install my heat pump water heater? Well, I'll preface this slide with this. More often than not, your heat pump water heater will be installed probably exactly where your either electric or your gas water heater currently is. assuming that would not cause some of the issues that I've already mentioned. But your contractor should talk about the air volume requirements for the unit. If you're in a basement, large basement, like some of the photos that we showed, then that shouldn't be an issue. Look at where the current water heater is located and see if a heat pump water heater would be appropriate for that location. Ask about the frequency of occupancy of certain locations. So let's say you work from home and your desk is really close to the water heater. Again, maybe not super common, but could happen. They might suggest putting it in another place. But they should describe how the location can affect comfort from the things that we mentioned. They should not say they'll just put it where the old unit is, although in most cases, that's probably what will happen. Um, I would say in cases like maybe in manufactured homes, where space is a little tighter, there might be more things to consider. Next slide. Post installation. So you've decided on your heat pump water heater, you have it installed. What should you ask your installer about? Well, you should ask them to walk you through those operational modes. Those modes vary by model. Some have hybrid, efficiency, um, vacation mode, that sort of thing. And they all vary. So, and they're not always super intuitive. So have them walk you through the operational modes and ask them how to help you find and clean the filter. My parents actually, they have a heat pump water heater. I asked them, I knew they had an electric resistance one. And I said, how old's your water heater? It's 3 years old. Do you have a heat pump water heater? And they said, I don't know. And they took a picture and I said, that's a heat pump water heater. Did they walk you through the modes? The installer did not walk them through the modes. Did you know there's a filter that you have to clean? They did not know that. So I said, well, pull it out at the top. It should be at the top. Pull it out and clean it and put it back. And sure enough, they did. But actually, they had the same water heater that's in that photo there. But yeah, make sure you have that so that you can avoid any issues and can get the most out of your heat pump water heater. Next slide. So, speaking of installers, you can find experienced contractors through the heat pump water heater installer network, and we'll send these slides out after the presentation, so you can click on that link and see people on that list. This was a network of certified contractors created by Electrified Everything. They completed training and they verify their experience. They're licensed, and they are experienced with heat pump water heaters. That being said, even if you decide to go with the contractor who's not on that list and installs heat pump water heaters, asking any contractor these questions is a really good idea. Next slide. Do heat pump water heaters save money and or energy? Also a very good question. Next slide. So yeah, compared to standard electric water heater, you can expect to save around $300 to $500 per year. Because they're so much more efficient and you're just using electricity. So the savings really do add up pretty quickly for the heat pump water heaters. If you're going compared to a standard gas water heater, well, you can expect to break even to get to up to about $175 annual savings. And of course, this depends upon the price of electricity, the price of gas, which fluctuates. So the savings could be greater in a year where gas prices are really high. Next slide. And over the lifetime, this is a comparison that we did with this. It's linked at the bottom. The Rocky Mountain Institute's green upgrade calculator has a lot of assumptions and things built into it, things that none of us can possibly know. But the heat pump water heater fares pretty comparably with this is a natural gas tank water heater over the lifetime. It's a little more expensive. And again, this has assumptions about gas prices and electric prices. So you pay a little more upfront, but you recoup those costs over time, and it comes out to a pretty similar cost. Next slide. And this is the emissions. Some of you mentioned that your motivations were environmental or climate related. And so these are the lifetime CO2 emissions comparison with the heat pump water heater. I will note that this, you can see that green line diverging from the the black line, and the green line being the heat pump water heater. That line will actually kind of, as Excel Energy in your case, decarbonizes more and more. That will flatten out until actually we are now T minus what 14 years um, from 2040. So yeah, that will be if the grid's decarbonized, that will accelerate even greater. So the emission savings will be even greater. Next slide. And heat pump. Speaking of climate, heat pump water heaters have a big role to play in decarbonizing. So this was a study that Center for Energy Environment conducted in Hennepin County about what it would take to decarbonize all residential 1 to 4 unit homes in the county, and what portion of that decarbonization is attributable to different types of technology. So you can see almost complete decarbonization, and 64% is heat pumps and HVAC systems. But you can see the heat pump water heater as a big chunk there, 16%, right after weatherization. So because we use so much hot water, we do emit a lot of CO2 from those currently, but heat pump water heaters, you can rest easy knowing that if you get one of these, that you can be part of something bigger and decarbonizing um, our county. Next slide. Okay, so that was a lot of information, and I've seen questions pop up in the chat, so we're gonna pause here and see what we have. Matthew, you were handling the chat.
Yeah, we've got a couple of great questions. Um, there were a couple of questions about does a heat pump water heater need to be vented to make sure it has enough airflow around it? So yeah, Sean, maybe you could speak to louvered doors and stuff like that.
Sure. So the heat pump water heater does not need to be vented in the sense that like a gas water heater needs to be vented, so the combustion gases can go away from the house. But it does, like we said, it needs proper airflow. If you have a home where you have like a heat pump water heater closet or a small room, yeah, you would need to put those louvers um, in order to be able to get air in and out of that room, so that because it's pulling air in and expelling air. So if you don't have enough, it'd be like trying to breathe through a straw if it didn't have enough um, airflow. And so it does need to be properly have air properly flowing through it. So you can achieve that through those louvers, or as we mentioned, ducting um, in or out of that room, and not outside, but into another room or from another room. And then you might have a louver door as well. The setup is really case by case, and you want to talk to a contractor to see what they recommend based on the size and where it's located. Um, was there a second part of that question, or that was it?
That was it for that
Great.
question. There's one follow-up. Are lattice doors around the equipment sufficient for airflow? And yeah, lattice doors, louvered doors, they're like the doors with slots like in them. Both of those are sufficient. Um,
Yeah, or you
another
can, oh, sorry, just one more thing. If you don't like the look of those, you could cut like the bottom of the door. They might recommend like make the door short so that the air can escape out the bottom of it too. Um, it just depends. So they'll give you options, or they should give you options if you need that. If you don't, you don't have to worry about it.
Awesome. And we got another question from Susan. What's the operating cost comparison between a heat pump water heater and a high efficiency gas tank water heater with a exhaust gas blower? So that's a power vented water heater that uses a fan to blow the exhaust gas out of the house with PVC pipe.
Yeah, so that's basically what our example is. That gas water heater would be like a high efficiency um, gas water heater, probably the newest one you could buy. Like we said, depending on the model of your heat pump water heater and that, you could expect to break even like operating cost. I think back at that slide, it was like, um, well, I know that it was like $114 a year, I believe, for the heat pump water heater. I know I had a high efficiency gas one, and that was around $200. So, um, yeah, break even to $175, the example we showed. That's probably about right, but it depends on, like I said, the models for each one. So generally a little bit lower, but it depends.
Great. And then, yeah, one more question, and then we can keep moving. Um, this is a terminology question. What is a hybrid heat pump water heater? Or why are they called hybrid water heaters sometimes?
Hybrid water heaters because they have both a heat pump and they also have that electric resistance element in there, and that's again so that if you get in a time of high demand, that you might be in trouble of, I don't know, let's say your extended family comes to stay and everyone's going crazy with the showers and they need to do a little laundry and all this is going on. Those elements would assist your heat pump in making sure that you had enough hot water. So they're hybrid in that they do the heat pump, but also electric resistance in the event that you need it.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then thanks, Rod. So the 120 volt heat pump water heater is not hybrid, correct? Yeah, the 120 volt heat pump water heater does not have those electric resistance elements in there. That's why it can run on a standard 120 volt outlet. And I would just note for Jim and Rod, hybrid is kind of just like a branding term that companies use. It's not necessarily like a technical term. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for the questions. Keep them coming and we'll keep answering them.
All right. So I think we're ready to move on to stoves and clothes dryers. So I'll give it back to you, Najma.
Thank you, Sean. Um, Sorry, everyone. So induction ranges are very common nowadays, primarily because they are a great solution to our cooking needs. They are very energy efficient and they're electric. And the significant thing about them and the reason why a lot of people love them is that they heat the pan and not the cooktop. They boil water very quickly, in about 2 minutes compared to like a gas that boils in like 8 minutes. And then they have a precise temperature control simply because they use a heat pump technology. They're very easy to clean. If you can see the image on the right, they're like the top is the surface is leveled, so there's no nooks and crooks that you have to like get into to clean. And compared to like gas ranges that produce a lot of indoor air pollutions, induction ranges do not do that. And the traditional electric ranges are good options too. Range safety and indoor air pollution. As I mentioned, gas stoves release hazardous pollutants such as nitrogen dioxide and carbon monoxide, whereas induction ranges do not do that, and gas stoves tend to like leak even when they're off. And research and studies have shown that children living in households with gas ranges are over 40% more likely to have asthma as well as other health complications. So electric cooking does not have all of these issues. How do induction stoves work? Well, they're a neat technology. So basically, they work through an electric magnetic field, which transfers energy directly to the cooking pan through that field. You can see the image on the right, how that works. So the induction stove creates electric magnetic field. It's then transferred to the ceramic surface, and it works with magnetic cookware. What to expect with an induction range? So the cookware must be magnetic, and one way you can find out is that first if you look at the image on the right, that little image is like usually found on the bottom of the cookware. That just indicates that a cookware is compatible with an induction range. Compatible cookwares are steel, cast iron, and enameled cast iron. Ones that are not compatible are the aluminum and copper. And one way you can test that is by using a magnet. And electromagnetic field may not be safe for people with pacemakers, or if you're someone who has a pacemaker and you want to get an induction stove, this is something to keep in mind. Um, Usually people who are beginners or newer to induction ranges report that fast heating, it heats really fast, which is also a good, like one of the benefits that it heats fast, but that's also the learning curve at the beginning. It can burn things at the beginning, but it's, again, as I said, it's the learning curve. As for the volt, it requires 240 volt outlet. For the dryers, the heat pump, or also known as ventless clothes dryers, similar to other heat pumps, they're very energy efficient, and they're the most energy efficient option. They're very gentle on clothes. They do not need venting. They're 2 times as efficient as the traditional electric dryers. And again, the traditional electric dryers are a good option too. Um, how do heat pump dryers work? Well, the way they work is that they use heat pump technology that recirculates hot air to draw away moisture from your clothing. The evaporator will then condense, or it cools the moist air and turns the water vapor into liquid water. They uses less electricity, and it also operates at lower temperature of around 120 degrees Fahrenheit instead of the 170. And this diagram shows the air cycle inside a heat pump dryer. So if you look at the red arrows, that shows warm dry air entering the drum and drying the clothes. The purple arrows just show warm air, a warm moist air leaving the clothes after absorbing moisture. And at the bottom, the evaporator cools the moist air and removes the water, turning it into liquid that can be collected or drained away. And then finally, the condenser then reheats the air. I know that's a long way to like explain it, but basically the same air is being reused over and over instead of being vented outside, which is what makes heat pump dryers so energy efficient. What to expect with heat pump dryers? They have a longer cycle of typically between 45 to 90 minutes. They do not need venting. They require a condensate system of either pan or drain, as I mentioned earlier, like the water, the water that's like taken out of your clothes needs a place to be drained into. And then they have multiple filters to clean, compared to like regular dryers that have one vent that you clean. This one will have a few, and they would require 240 volt outlet typically. What should I anticipate when installing an electric stove or dryer? Electrifying appliances may require new wiring. So if you're switching from gas to electric appliances, it often requires new 240 volt wiring and capping gas lines. You would need to consult an electrician, HVAC technician, or a plumber. And again, if you're someone who has a sense of what your panel looks like and what it is and the differences, you could check to see if you have a 240 volt outlet and space in your panel. One question that we often get is people ask is where they can get an electric stove or dryer. And the answer is that at the traditional appliance retailers. So retailers with many induction stove or heat pump dryers have the most experience. They offer installation services for simple installs. However, they don't offer wiring and gas capping. When seeking retailers or contractors, some questions you can ask them are, What do your delivery and installation services include? And the salesperson should clearly outline what their services include. They should also be upfront if they can do electrical wiring or gas capping. However, they should not try to talk to you into gas appliance. Um, any questions on this section?
We yeah, no big questions. Answered one of them in the chat. So if folks have questions, throw them in the chat and we can answer them later, but I think we can keep moving.
And now I'm gonna pass it off to Sean to talk about electrical panels.
All right, so yeah, let's talk about electrical panels and why you may or may not need to upgrade yours. Next slide. What are electrical panels? I'm sure all of you have seen these in your home. They're that gray steel box that holds your circuit breakers. You run to them when your power goes out, maybe, if that's the issue. They connect your utilities infrastructure to your home's electrical system, and they protect you against power surges and allocate electricity throughout your home. Next slide. These are examples of what they look like, a few different varieties of panels. Next slide. This is a sub panel. Some of you may have one of these in your home, and you will almost certainly have an electrical meter, usually on the outside of your home. Next slide. So finding the size of your electrical panel, you need to find the main breaker, and this is typically the largest switch inside your electrical panel, often but not always at the top of the panel. It's usually labeled main or service disconnect. And this will show you what the panel size in amps is of your panel, or it'll be located next to the main breaker. It will indicate what size it is. Next slide. Here's what this looks like. So this photo on the left shows where the main breaker is. Again, it's top and center and has that one switch. And then here's a close-up of another switch, and it says 200. So this is a 200 amp panel, and it's stamped right on there. Next slide. The components of an electrical panel. So this again will show the capacity, the amps of the panel. Typically it's from 600 to 200 amps. And you'll also have circuit breakers, which will show the volts and the amps of each circuit. So you'll have a single pole breaker, which will provide electricity to outlets and appliances that will use 120 volts. And then your double pole breaker, that will be for your larger appliances. In this case, we have a centrally ducted heat pump and a hybrid heat pump dryer. And the breaker amps vary, usually between 15 and 50 amps. So on this we have, looks like 15 and 30 for our breakers here. Next slide. When do you need to upgrade your panel? Well, if your panel's capacity in amps is not high enough, say you have a 60 or 100 amp panel and you want to add an electric car and a hot tub, you may not have enough amps. Or there may be not enough physical space, so there are no open circuit breaker spots on your panel. It is completely full, even if maybe you're not using all of your panel's capacity. Next slide. So what capacity do you need? Well, if you have a 60 amp panel, which that's most common in older homes, you certainly need to upsize to electrify. If you have a 100 amp panel, this will depend on your home and your goals and what you're adding or plan to add. If you have a 150 amp panel, you most likely don't need to upsize unless you put in some large users of electricity. They're going to draw a lot of power. And if you have 200 amps, it's very unlikely that you'll need to upsize. That's usually sufficient for most single family homes. Next slide. So some fast facts. Median home with a 100 amp panel uses less than 50% of its capacity. So there's a lot of unused capacity even in those 100 amp panels. So most of them never exceed that threshold. And from that study I mentioned earlier, about 18% of homes in Hennepin County need a panel upgrade to fully electrify. So it's not completely uncommon, but most homes don't need a panel upgrade. And upsizing from 100 amp to 200 amp is really the simplest way to enable future electrification projects. Um, yeah, like electric car, heat pump, that sort of thing. Next slide. How do you evaluate if you'll need a panel upgrade? Next slide. Well, you'll want to ask yourself a few questions. So what's your panel's current amp capacity? 60, 100, 200? Do you have available circuit breakers? What are your current electricity needs? And what are your short, medium, long-term plans for maybe adding um, to your panel? Next slide. So there are two ways to go about this, two main ways. You can either work with an electrician to calculate your electrical panel's load. I'd say that's what most people do. Or you could go the DIY route and self-assess your panel's electrical load. Next slide. And these are the panel self-assessment options. So number one is based on electrical usage. This is from the National Electrical Code. You can use electric meter bill data to estimate your max demand. This is a newer and more precise method. Or you could go with the older method, which is to base it on the loads in your home, which is you add up all the electrical load of the appliances, lights, and end uses. This is traditionally used by electricians, but is like more conservative than the first method. And the last is you could go the Redwood Energy Watt Diet, which is a self-assessment and shows you how to get the most out of your existing panel. We won't go into detail about all of these because they are very detailed, but we are sending this out after the presentation. So if you're interested in doing the self-assessment, you can click on these links and dive into these methods and spreadsheets and figure out if this is something you want to do. Next slide. How can you avoid electrical panel upgrades? Next slide. You can install energy efficient and right-sized equipment. So properly sized HVAC and appliances for your home. Upgrade to lighting to LEDs to reduce the draw on that panel, and choose power efficient versions of appliances. So look for energy, the old Energy Star label on any appliances that you buy, or some of the ones we mentioned. Next slide. You can also optimize circuit breaker space. You can buy combined appliances such as a clothes washer and dryer or an oven and cooktop. There are also circuit sharing devices that will share circuits between, say, an EV charger and a clothes dryer, or a clothes dryer and a hot tub, something that will use the same amperage. There's automatic pausing units that you can install that will pause the draw. Say you're charging a car and it's on the same circuit as your dryer or your stove. Well, it'll give your dryer, your stove priority, and it'll pause the charging of the car without you having to do that manually. And you could combine small circuits into a subpanel, or you could also use tandem or slim breakers to create more space on your panel. Next slide. So what do you need to ask contractors? Your contractor should be able to answer these questions. Does your panel have capacity for this appliance or equipment upgrade? What if you want to do other stuff in the future? So we encourage people to think about what they might want to add in the future, and they should be able to tell you if that will overload your panel or not, and ask them how they're assessing your panel capacity. They shouldn't say that they're assessing your capacity based on your home square footage, because same size home can vary differently um, in the amount of demand on that panel. And they shouldn't use the experience or make a rule of thumb estimate to what size panel you will need, because every home and users, inhabitants of that home are different. Next slide. Panel will cost you around $2,000 to $6,000, sometimes more, depending on what they have to do. Wiring for some of those 240 volt outlets could range between 800 to 1500 per circuit. And the time it could take depends on the project. It really, really depends, but it could take weeks or months to complete this. Next slide. So in summary, if you have a 60 amp panel, you certainly need to upsize if you want to electrify. 100 amp, we recommend that you assess your panel. So you could might be worth up if you want to go for full electrification, it's probably worth upsizing from the start. If you want to go partial or you're not sure, you could start with those other strategies. But if you have 150 or 200 amp, it's you most likely do not need to upsize your panel. Next slide. All right, and now Najma is going to close us out with some resources to help you electrify.
So there are incentives to help bring down the upfront cost of these projects. There are two types of incentives available. There's the utility rebates that are available to everyone, and there's the city rebate matches that are available to the residents of Edina and St. Louis Park, as well as other cities that have these programs. The state of Minnesota has a funding for an electrical panel grant that they hope to roll out soon in the future. And then the Federal Inflation Reduction Act rebates are still caught up in issues with the federal government, and their program guidance may be changing. So if you have a project and you're thinking of getting started, we recommend that you do not plan around these federal rebates. And looking at the table, it just gives you an estimate of what a project would be, as well as the incentives that are available for them. For example, if you have a heat pump, you want to install a heat pump water heater, the estimated installation cost is between 4,000 and 7,000, and the incentive that's available is up to 1,250. And then if you want to get an induction stove, the estimate cost is 1,000 to 4,000, and you could get an incentive up to 750. The best way you can find out what incentives are available to you and in your area is by using the rewiring calculator. I'll do a quick demo of how you can use this calculator. Okay, so a good, let's see, 5. All you need to do is enter your zip code. You don't have to enter anything else, or you can do that, but let's see your, let's say you want to get a water heater. So in Edina, Excel offers up to $500 for a heat pump water heater. And then if you're in Edina, there's the Edina Community Climate Action Fund that has up to $750 off of a heat pump water heater. And then therefore, if you're in St. Louis Park, I think this zip code works for both areas, so you could get up to $750 off a heat pump water heater. But yeah, this is how this works. You just need to enter your zip code and go through the projects. There are several projects that you could choose from. Let's see, electrical panel and wiring. It gives you the rebates that are available. So Excel Home Rebates offers $1,500 off an electrical panel. And then in Edina, there's the Edina Community Climate Action Fund that gives you also $1,500 off of an electrical panel. But yeah, that's how it works. And
Great. And we just got a note from Ellie Rabin with the City of St. Louis Park describing how the City of St. Louis Park provides a rebate match. So you need to get a home energy squad visit, and then the city will match 50% to 100% of the utility rebates, except in the case of a heat pump water heater where it's 100 to 150% match. So we'll send out the links to these city programs as well. If you are a resident of Edina or St. Louis Park, you can take a look.
Thank you. As Matthew mentioned, you can get it started with a Home Energy Squad visit. This is a low-cost utility program to help you find what systems and equipment your home has. So they basically help assess your household by looking at your home's weatherization, so wall, attic insulation, your furnace. They come in with really cool gadgets, one of them being an infrared camera to take a look at your houses if it's leaking, or and at the end of this visit, you get a very detailed report. They help you get connected with recommended contractors and incentives, and you could sign up on there, either by using the QR code or the link. And then another resource is the Electrify Everything advisors. You can either call them or email them. These are cost-free and pressure-free individuals who can help you complete your home electrification projects, as well as answer your questions. They also help connect you to financing, city utility rebates, and high-quality contractors that have been vetted and that we have worked with too. You could contact them by either going on our online form, emailing them, or calling them. And lastly, we're going to go into our neighbor panel. I'm going to pass it off to Sean to introduce our panelists.
Great. Thank you very much, Najma. Yeah, so tonight we have with us Rod Fisher and Katie Wingrove um, joining us to talk about their experience installing, well, several of these appliances. So go ahead and Rod, I'll start with you, and then you, Katie, tell us what you've installed with the things you talked about tonight, and what city do you come from?
Hey, hi, everybody. Yeah, I live in Eden Prairie. I've been interested in this area for quite a few years. So, just a quick rundown. We put in a heat pump dryer, a ventless dryer in 2019. We put in a water heater in 2021. It's a 50-gallon Richmond. Our dryer is a Miele. It's a German made, very nice dryer. Um, and I'll say choices in both of those models were because they allow time of use time delay. And happen to be on a Excel Flex Time program, so we pay really ridiculously low rates at night. And so we often run the dryer and the water heater mostly at night. And then that's for those. We don't have I put in a mini split and also we just put in an air source, but you've covered those in the last year. But it's relevant because we had to upgrade our circuits to 200 amps from 100 because we also have two electric cars. So, um, but that was a small deal and you know,
Sorry, Rod. It was a little bit difficult to hear you. But I'll go over to Katie.
ooh,
And Katie, why don't you? Oh,
okay,
now we can hear you.
I'll plug in a different header.
Okay, great. And then we'll come back to you. But Katie, why don't you go ahead and tell us
Hey,
where you're coming from and what you've
can you hear me
installed?
okay?
I can, yes.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so I'm in Edina and I've got a 1953 Rambler and we started off pretty much everything gas and we're trying to go fully electric. I guess pretty recently we moved to this house in 2022. So we haven't been here that long, but we've been really focused on these projects. And so we started with, we just did the attic insulation, air sealing, and some rim joist spraying at the beginning. And then we did an induction stove. And then we had to do our water heater. So we did heat pump, water heater. That one was kind of an emergency leak, inbound guests situation, but got that one done. And then we actually just did our HVAC as well. That one was this year, just like a month ago. So our last gas appliance is the dryer. So I'm excited to hear that the heat pump dryers are are viable because our venting situation is really bad here too, very much not non-standard venting, so it'd be nice to not need a vent at all. But and we had to upgrade our panel as well, so that we did that at the beginning. Um, yeah, so a lot of activity in the last little bit.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And so we had quite a few questions about heat pump water heaters. So could you just tell us, um, I'll start with you, Katie, and then I'll go back to Rod. Actually, how has your experience been with the heat pump water heater? Do you run out of hot water? And how did you choose the right size?
Yeah, so I will say we have never run out of hot water since we got it. Uh, I guess a caveat to that is we have like very young children right now. They're not really doing like the big full showers yet. So I'd say we're not running like full family, everyone through the shower every morning. I know, but so far we hardly notice it, which I think is what you want out of a water heater in terms of no supply issues. For sizing, um, I guess we started just going off of like, we Googled and they were saying for a family of four, which is us, that 40 to 50 gallons is kind of typical. We actually decided to upsize because we were going with heat pump and we weren't as sure at the time, and we wanted to make sure that we would have enough when like the full family was trying to crank through the system. So we have the 65 gallon, and it's huge. When they brought it in, I was like, oh. um, but it actually it almost didn't fit. Our basement headspace is really low, so that's something if you are trying to go for a bigger one, that is a possible limitation you might run into in your basement. But yeah, so I think we probably overdid it on sizing because I don't necessarily expect to be doing like dishwasher and everyone, going through the shower and everything all at the same time. But that's what we ended up going with.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and planning, I mean, for the future, you may need that extra capacity in a few years. Rod, same question. How's your experience been since you have one? Have you run out of hot water?
Is the sound better now?
It is. Yep.
Okay, okay, sorry about that. No, we put in a 50 gallon. It's just the two of us now. Our kids are grown. But well, first I knew it had this we got the 240, so it's got the faster heat backup. Never have used that. Never ever. I in fact turned them off just to see if we would ever need them, and we've never needed the electric element backup. Never run out of hot water except once when a 25-year-old nephew came and sat in the shower for like 30 minutes. But otherwise, no issues at all. And operating it is just green.
Great. Um, Rod, you mentioned financial savings. So my next question, I'll start with you and then go back to Katie. Have you noticed any financial savings from the appliances you've installed? Um,
That's I wish I was able to do that, but we installed so much within 5 years that as soon as we put in, we can watch our electric bill, but as soon as we put in an electric car, it just blew up. And we don't have. I did put in a monitoring system to track devices across the house, but it's not precise enough. So the good news is we don't use any gas except in the winter when for the air source when it's below whatever 20 or something. Um, but no, I trust that the efficiency is so great, which of course it is, that the money's there, but it's showing up on our electric bill now and not on our gas bill.
right. Yeah. Have you signed up for the space heating rate with Excel as well, or are you just on the time of use?
No, we got on the flex rate back when it was a pilot program. I think it's called flex rate or something, flex something. And it was a pilot program, so we got on and we stayed on, even though the space heating rate might make more sense for us because we're paying basically twice during the high peak of the day and a fourth at night. So if we can run at night, we're paying 3 cents for a kilowatt of electricity, kilowatt hour. Um,
Right.
so we'll probably.
Oh, sounds like you kind of faded again. I'm not sure what the issue
Oh,
was.
sorry.
No, it's
Sorry.
okay. Yeah, and for those of you who weren't here last week, that space heating rate is a discounted rate between October and May, and it's about 40, almost half of the regular rate of electricity, and you have to use primarily electric space heating. So that's air source heat pump. I suppose you could use it with baseboards, but it's a really good way to save, and it's all of your electricity, so you could run your induction stove, electric car on that discounted rate during those months. Katie, same question for you. Any financial savings, or is it in one pocket, out one pocket in the other, or
It,
however that would be?
yeah, unfortunately, I guess my answer is kind of the same. I think since we've done these projects recently and we're also switching utilities from one to the other, it's hard to be like, oh wow, like the this bill is so much lower because we're kind of like decreasing one and increasing the other. And then, for the gas appliances, like I noticed my gas bill for the last pay period or whatever was $11. And I think nine of that is fees. So it means I'm only paying like $2 to run my dryer, um, which kind of surprised. I was like, oh, so I don't know if there's something weird going on there because I would expect that to be more, but when I switch dryers, I don't think I'm going to be able to get better than $2 uh, a pay period, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I think yeah, our electrical is definitely going up. We did get the space heating rate for winter, so that was great because since we're all electric, including electric backup, we're kind of expecting some of those winter bills could really go up. And then for summer, I think we no longer can do the what's it called? I think there's like a surge pricing, like a smart switch, but it's not compatible with our heat pump. So those costs are actually going to go up a tiny bit. So basically all the costs are they're all changing so much that I haven't been able to uh, see a very like a clean trend. But
Sure. One way or the other, not in the negative either, not paying a lot more money overall.
right, right.
Okay. Matthew, I saw you come off mute. Go ahead.
Yeah, since we're talking about rates, Jim had a question for Rod. Um, since you're on the time of use rate, wondering how do you schedule your heat pump water heater to run at night and take advantage of that cheaper nighttime electricity?
Richmond model we bought has a programmable interface, so I do it from my phone and you can say what period of the day you want it to run hot, cold. Of course, we need hot water during the day, and it does run during the day. So what we do is we run it hotter at night. I think not real hot, maybe 125. So I get a big blast of nice super hot water in the morning, and then we let it go down to 110 during the day, and it just runs less. So it's not as impactful on the water heater because you do need to run that during the day depending on your load. It's more useful for the dryer, for the cars, to burn that stuff at night, which is what we do. If I had a 65 gallon, I'm sure I could charge that thing up to 120 at night and it wouldn't run much during the day because, just the two of us are there.
Great. Thank you. And one last question. We like to ask this question to our panelists. I'll start with you, Katie, and then give Rod the last word. What do you wish that you'd done differently, if anything, with any of your projects, I guess?
Um, I'm so far I'm really feeling really good about everything. I think for our water heater, we were in such a rush. I feel like I didn't really get to maybe find like the exact contractor that I wanted. That process was just really fast. I feel like I've since found some other companies that are more like into heat pumps as more of a primary interest. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to map out all your electrical at the beginning for anything that you're wanting to do to kind of like try to tackle everything while the electricians are here because that part um, can get expensive and definitely will kind of be a stopping point if you don't have what you need to go forward. We've kind of had to circle back and have the electricians in a couple different times, so just learned a lot on that. But so far, I'm really happy with all our models that we've chosen and how everything is running. So far, yeah, no, no huge regrets.
Great. That's good to hear. Rod, same question. What do you wish you'd done differently, if anything?
Right. I'll first say we didn't put in an induction stove. I looked into the efficiency, and we have like and it's only about 20% less efficient than induction, so we didn't want to go that far. Um, on that water heater and dryer, I think there's just, as far as choosing, there's no way to go wrong. As Katie said, um, getting because those are off the shelf items and they run great, once you decide to put them in. Doing the electrical work is an area where you have to make some good choices and you want a good contractor. But the one thing I wish I would have done is found a better contractor for my air source heat pump for the house. Um, I've talked to so many, including recommended, people, and I wish I would have gone with Nick Bender because I'm sure you guys know that name, but um, talking to other companies, they just keep presenting me they don't know about, and that's frustrating because trying to tune it up, trying to deal with issues with it, they just keep sending me people that don't really understand them. So that's what I wish I would have done. Nick Bender, anybody, air source heat pumps. I didn't use him and I should have.
I just chimed into the chat because we use him and he is really great resource for that.
Well, thank you both. Yeah, Nick's a great guy, very experienced, and he's on our or the air source heat pump collaboratives for contractor list as well as our um, heat pump water heater installer network contract list, which we will send you a link to along with the slides from this presentation, links to other resources, and this was also being recording. So if you want to come back and watch some of it live or not really live, then you can do so. But I want to thank both of our neighbor panelists, Katie and Rod, for coming here and sharing your experiences with us. And that is it for our webinar for tonight. So